A sound came up from the bottom of the Sunda Trench. Not a crash, not a roar. A long, low, slow sound that nobody on the research vessel had ever heard before. And when the team played it back on the bridge, the room went quiet. The kind of quiet you only get when people realize something is wrong. The kind of quiet you get when people realize something they cannot explain. The mission stopped that night. The chief scientist ordered every instrument pulled up to the surface. They needed to think. They needed to decide if they were going back down again. And what you're about to hear is the part of the story that made them almost never go back. The Sunda Trench is one of the deepest places on the planet. It runs along the southwestern edge of Indonesia, dropping more than 24,000 feet below the surface of the ocean. The water there is colder than any winter you have ever stood outside in. The pressure is high enough to crush a submarine like a paper cup. There's no sunlight past the first 1,000 feet. There is no color past 2,000 feet. There is only darkness, only cold, and only a kind of silence that is not really silence at all. Because the deep ocean is full of sounds we cannot hear from the surface, and some of those sounds, recorded by hydrophones lowered thousands of feet into the black water, do not have any clean explanation even to this day. To understand why this recording made the team stop, you need to understand how rare deep-sea recording missions really are. Each one costs millions of dollars. Each one takes years of planning. Each one requires a deep submergence vehicle built to survive the kind of pressure that would turn a human body into paste in a fraction of a second. Most deep trench dives only happen a handful of times per decade. So when a team finally reaches the bottom of a place like the Sunda Trench and starts picking up something that does not fit any known model, the stakes get very large, very fast. You cannot just drop back down next week. You have to decide if what you are hearing is real, if it matters, and if it is worth the risk of sending people back down into a place where one small mistake ends everything for everyone on that sub. The mission started like most deep-sea missions do. A research vessel, the kind of ship that looks more like a rolling factory than a boat, left port in Jakarta in the early morning light. On board were 34 scientists, a dozen engineers, and 3 robotic submarines designed to handle the crushing black water at the bottom of the trench. Their goal was simple on paper. They wanted to map a stretch of seafloor that had never been properly mapped before. They wanted to listen to the deep water for natural earthquake signals. They wanted to film any new species of creature they could find in the deepest, coldest, darkest place on the continental edge. None of the scientists on that ship expected to record anything that would make them afraid to go down again. One of the lead scientists on the mission was a senior oceanographer who had spent more than 30 years listening to recordings from the deep. He had heard whale songs. He had heard the low rumble of distant earthquakes. He had heard the snapping shrimps. He had heard the strange grunts and groans of animals nobody had ever seen. He had never heard anything like this. The recording ran for almost 90 seconds. It came from a hydrophone parked roughly 19,000 feet below the surface. It rose and fell slowly, like breathing, like something alive was moving through the water far below. And every single frequency in the recording matched nothing in any open scientific database. Nothing. Here's the part that made the room go quiet. The scientist replayed the recording 6 times in a row. He had his assistant replay it another 6 times. They slowed it down. They sped it up. They checked it against blue whale calls, sperm whale clicks, fin whale moans. They checked it against earthquakes, volcanic tremor, submarine landslides, ice cracking somewhere far away. They checked it against their own ship, against the submarine that had been on the surface at the time. Nothing matched. The sound came from something down in the trench, something moving, something alive, or at least something that sounded alive. You have to remember what 19,000 feet of water actually feels like to be standing inside of. It is so dark your eyes are useless. It is so cold that unprotected skin would go numb in under a minute. The pressure on every square inch of your body would feel like the weight of a brick wall pressing in on your chest all the time. The deep ocean is not a friendly place. It does not want you there. Anything that lives that deep has to be built to survive a world that wants to crush it. Anything that moves down there is something engineers and biologists have studied for decades. So when a brand new sound comes up from that blackness, you do not just shrug, you listen closer, and then you get very worried. By the next morning, the entire science team was in the mess hall arguing. The oceanographer stood at the front with a laptop. He had charts. He had spectrograms. He had the recording play on a loop at the back of the room. Some of the younger scientists thought it could be a new whale species. Some thought it could be a squid. Squid are some of the deepest living animals on the planet. They have been recorded at depths nobody thought they could survive. But the pattern in the sound was not like any squid anyone had ever studied. The pattern almost looked intentional, almost like a rhythm, almost like a song one animal was singing to another somewhere in the dark. A senior biologist pointed out something nobody had noticed yet. The recording had a strange repeating rise and fall to it, almost like a slow heartbeat, almost like a slow breath, and the time between each rise and each fall was almost exactly the same. Over and over for 90 seconds. No natural noise does that. Natural noise is messy. It has bumps. It has cracks. It has irregular silences. This sound did not. It felt structured. It felt like something with intent was making it. The captain of the vessel made the call. They were going to send one of the robotic submarines back down. They were going to park it at the exact depth where the recording had come from. They were going to listen for 48 hours. They were going to film everything that came within range of the lights. The submarine was one of the most advanced deep-sea robots in the world. It was rated to almost 30,000 feet. It had high-definition cameras. It had a directional microphone array. It had robotic arms that could grab samples. It could hover for days if it had to. And on the morning of the second descent, the team watched the feed as the sub slowly sank through the black water. For the first 3 hours, the cameras showed nothing. Just black water, just the faint glow of silt drifting past the lights. For most of the fourth hour, nothing changed. Then the sub hit the bottom. The bottom of the Sunda Trench in that stretch is a flat plain of soft mud, broken every few hundred meters by rocky outcrops that stick up like broken teeth. The sub settled on the mud about 6 feet from one of those outcrops. The crew turned on the directional microphone. They turned the gain all the way up. They waited. And 40 minutes later, the recording team heard it again. The same slow, low sound, coming from somewhere east of the sub, coming closer. Now imagine you are the one watching this feed in real time. You're sitting in a dark control room. You're watching a tiny robotic eye on the floor of the deepest trench your country has ever explored. And somewhere in the black water to your right, something is making a sound you cannot explain. Your hands are shaking a little. Your mouth is dry. You know that whatever it is, you cannot run. You cannot leave. You are at the bottom of the ocean. You have to sit and watch. You have to wait for it to come into the light. The first thing the cameras caught was a shadow. A slow-moving shadow drifting across the silt maybe 100 meters east of the sub. Too far for the cameras to get a clear shape. Too dark for the lights to reach cleanly through the silt-laden water. But the shadow had weight to it. It moved smoothly. It did not drift like a jellyfish. It did not dart like a squid. It slid. Slowly. Patiently. The way a large animal moves when it has nowhere it needs to be in a hurry. The kind of slow that only happens when you are the biggest thing in the room. Over the next hour, the team watched the shadow circle the sub twice. Each time it passed the same rocky outcrop to the east. Each time it drifted slowly back into the open water. The team could not tell how big it was. They could not tell how many there were. They could not tell if the sound and the shadow were even the same animal. But every time the shadow drifted close to the sub, the microphone picked up the low, slow breathing sound again. Always the same pattern. Always the same slow rise and fall. Almost as if the shadow and the sound were the same thing, watching the sub the way the team was watching it. By the end of the 48-hour listening window, the shadow had circled the sub 9 times. The sound had been recorded for almost 4 full hours of overlap, and nothing else had come close. No fish, no squid, no shark, nothing. As if the rest of the trench around that spot had been cleared out. As if everything else had moved away to make room for whatever this thing was. That is the part that gave the senior scientist the worst feeling. Predators do that. The biggest predators in any environment clear the space around them. They do it with size, they do it with sound, they do it with the slow warning that they are not to be touched. The team pulled the sub up 2 days later. Every sample jar was empty. Every camera card was loaded with hours of black water and shadows. The scientist in charge of the mission held a press conference back in Jakarta the following week. He did not say much. He said the team had recorded sounds of unknown origin. He said the team had observed movements of unknown origin. He said more data was being analyzed. He did not use the word creature. He did not use the word monster. He did not use the word unknown species. He used the word anomaly. In ocean science, anomaly is the word you use when you are not ready to tell the world you are afraid of what you saw. The ocean is very good at hiding things. It is the largest living space on the planet. It covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface. Most of it has never been seen by human eyes. Most of it has never been mapped. Most of it has never even been visited by a robot. There are mountain ranges on the seafloor taller than the Alps. There are canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon. There are rivers down there that flow along the bottom like blood in veins. And in the deepest, coldest, darkest parts of all that hidden terrain, there is plenty of room for an animal to live, to grow, to breed, and to die without ever being noticed by us. We have explored more of Mars than we have explored of our own deep ocean. The Sunda Trench is not the only place this kind of thing has happened. In the Mariana Trench, deep-sea hydrophones have picked up strange metallic-sounding calls that nobody can attribute to any known species. In the Kermadec Trench, a research sub recorded a deep rumbling sound that one of the senior scientists on that mission described as a low, almost mechanical groan. In the Puerto Rico Trench, an autonomous sub filmed a strange pulsing light at 22,000 feet, deep below where any sunlight could possibly reach. And in the Java Trench, on the other side of Indonesia from the Sunda, a different team captured sonar contacts that moved in tight, coordinated circles for hours before vanishing. The deep has a habit of doing this. It keeps slipping strange things past our instruments. Just enough to make us wonder, not quite enough to make us sure. What makes the Sunda Trench recording different is the duration. 90 seconds is a long time for a strange sound in the deep. Most of the unexplained noises captured elsewhere are short. They are blips, they are clicks, they are quick rumbles. But the Sunda recording held its pattern. It rose and fell and rose and fell for 90 straight seconds. That is not a blip. That is not a sonar artifact. That is something deciding to make sound for almost 2 minutes at the bottom of the ocean. That is something that wanted to be heard. Or at least, that is something that did not care whether it was heard. Think about what that means. The pressure at 19,000 feet would kill a human in a fraction of a second. The cold would shut down your muscles before you finished a breath. The dark would blind you in the time it took to blink. And some animal, some shape, some moving shadow is just down there in that darkness, going about its life, making sounds that travel up through miles of black water to the hydrophone of a ship that should not have been there. That animal does not know what a research vessel is. That animal does not know what humans are. That animal just lives there. That animal has probably been living there for a very long time. Some of the older scientists on the Sunda mission have a theory. Not a wild theory, not a science fiction theory, just a quiet theory they share over coffee after the meetings. Their theory is simple. The deep ocean is bigger than we think. It is older than we think. It is more alive than we think. And the things that live in it have had millions upon millions of years to evolve in places we cannot easily go. That is enough time for eyes to disappear. Enough time for bodies to grow soft and pale and strange. Enough time for an animal to get big, quiet, patient. Slow enough that nothing in its world bothers it. Slow enough that nothing in its world can fight it. What if a sperm whale could not survive that deep? What if a giant squid could not survive that deep? What if everything we know about the deep ocean is built on a handful of samples from a handful of places? What if most of the deep ocean still holds species we have never seen, never named, never filmed, never recorded? The Sunda Trench is not a small place. It runs roughly 3,000 kilometers long. It is wider in places than the United States, and we have mapped barely a tenth of it. There is more unknown ocean within the Sunda Trench than there is known ocean. That is not an exaggeration. That is just math. When the chief scientist was asked, in a quiet interview months later, if he thought the team would ever go back down, he paused for a long time. Then he said something that has stayed with the people who heard it. He said, "The deep ocean does not owe us answers." He said, "We go down there as guests." He said, "We should be careful what we ask for." He said that if there is something alive in that trench, it has been there long before us, and it will be there long after us. And the right thing to do, he said, is to listen carefully, to record honestly, and to never assume we know what we are looking at just because we do not recognize it. This is what you should hold in your head as the recording plays again in your mind. A slow, low, breathing sound, rising and falling, coming up from 19,000 feet of black water somewhere off the coast of Indonesia. We do not know what made it. We do not know if it is one animal or many. We do not know if the shadow the sub filmed was the same animal that made the sound. We do not know if it ever came back. We do not know if it is still down there right now, listening to us the way we listen to it. We only know that the team heard it. The team filmed it. And the team, a group of people who had spent their whole careers at sea, were afraid to go back down because of it. The ocean is the last true wilderness left on this planet. We have mapped the surface of the moon. We have mapped the surface of Mars. We have mapped the surface of Venus through the clouds. We have not yet mapped the bottom of our own ocean. There are still corners so deep, so cold, and so dark that going there would feel like leaving the planet entirely. And it is in those corners, the ones we have barely touched, that something is waiting to be understood. Not something to be afraid of, something to be listened to, something to be respected. Because the deep is not empty. The deep has never been empty. The deep is just quieter than we ever imagined. If you think about it, that is the part that should really stay with you. The quiet, the slow, the patience. An animal that lives 19,000 feet down, in total darkness, in water cold enough to stop your heart, under pressure, heavy enough to crush steel. That animal does not rush. That animal does not panic. That animal does not need to. It has been down there longer than humans have existed on the surface. It knew that world before we built our first boat. It will know that world long after our last ship has rotted away and sunk to join it on the seafloor. The deep ocean does not hurry. The deep ocean does not explain itself. The deep ocean just waits. And every now and then, when we are quiet enough to listen, it lets us hear just a small piece of what it has been holding in the dark. There is something else worth saying before we close. Most of what we know about the deep ocean comes from accidents. We did not go looking for the strange sound in the Sunda Trench. We went looking for a stretch of unmapped seafloor. We did not go looking for the giant squid. We went looking for nothing in particular, and the squid just happened to be there. We did not go looking for the metallic groan in the Kermadec Trench. We went looking for earthquake signals, and the groan was sitting on top of them. The deep gives us most of its secrets sideways. It hands them to us when we are looking the other way. It does that on purpose. You start to feel, after enough years of this work, that the deep ocean has opinions about how much it wants us to know. Think about that the next time you sit beside a window and stare at the ocean. Look past the waves. Look past the surface foam. Look past the color of the water. Imagine what is happening 2,000 feet below you. Imagine what is happening 4,000 feet below you. Imagine what is happening 10,000 feet below you in the pitch black. Imagine 19,000 feet below you in the Sunda Trench right now, at this very moment, in the year you are watching this video. Something is down there. Something alive is moving slowly through the mud. Something alive is making that slow, low breathing sound one more time. Or something is not. And that is the question that should keep oceanographers up at night for the rest of their careers. The recording has never been explained. The shadow has never been identified. The team has published 3 papers since that mission. None of them say what was down there. None of them say it was not something alive. They use the word anomaly. They use the word unclassified. They use the word unknown. They say more research is needed. They say additional expeditions are planned. And then the funding conversations begin, and people explain why sending a sub back down to that exact stretch of the Sunda Trench is expensive and hard and possibly dangerous. And the years go by, and the sound sits in a database somewhere in Jakarta, and the shadow sits on a hard drive somewhere in a lab. And nobody quite knows what to do with either one of them. You might wonder why scientists do not just come out and say what they think it was. The answer is simple. You do not get to be a senior oceanographer by guessing. You do not get to spend 30 years at sea by guessing. You earn that. You earn it by writing things in papers you can defend for the rest of your career. So when something comes up out of the deep that you cannot explain, you do not say it is a sea monster. You do not say it is an unknown species. You say it is unexplained. You say it is interesting. You say it deserves more work. And then you wait, because the deep has made you patient too. Here's the truth underneath all of this. We do not know what is at the bottom of the Sunda Trench. We do not know if the shadow and the sound were the same animal. We do not know if the animal was alone or one of many. We do not know if the sound is still being made right now in the same stretch of water. We do not know if there are other places where that same slow breathing sound is rising up out of a trench we have never even visited. We do not know what lives at the deepest parts of our own planet. And that is the part that should sit in your chest like a cold stone for the rest of the day. We live on a planet we have not finished exploring, and the stretch of it we understand the least is the part that is covered in water. The other truth is that this will keep happening. As we send more subs down, as we drop more hydrophones, as we build better cameras and better microphones and better robotic arms, the deep ocean will keep handing us back small pieces of itself we cannot fit into the world we already understand. We will keep hearing sounds we cannot match. We will keep filming shadows we cannot identify. We will keep finding animals nobody has ever named. And every time we do, we will feel a small, quiet awe. The kind of awe you only get from a place that has been holding its breath for longer than humans have even had a word for awe. If you made it this far, you should know that what you have just done, sitting here listening to the story of one strange sound in one deep trench, is the exact thing the team on the research vessel did that night on the bridge in Jakarta. You listened. You let the sound rise and fall. You let the shadow drift past. You let the deep ocean hold its weight on your chest for a few minutes. And even if you are not a scientist, even if you have never been on a ship, even if you have never seen the ocean in person, you can still do what the people who know this stuff best do. You can sit with the unknown. You can stop trying to explain it. You can let it be strange, because the deep is strange, and it has been strange for a very long time. Thank you for sitting with this one all the way through. Drop your theory in the comments below. Tell me what you think was making that slow breathing sound at the bottom of the Sunda Trench. Was it a squid? Was it a whale we have never cataloged? Was it something older? Was it something we have no name for yet? We do not know. And that is why these videos matter, because every time one of us says, "I do not know," the deep ocean gets a little smaller, the mystery gets a little brighter, and the next mission down has a little more reason to happen. If this one stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next time we drop a hydrophone into a part of the world we have never really listened to before. And the next time you look at the ocean, remember, the quiet you are seeing is not quiet. The silence you are hearing is not silence. Something is out there, in the dark, going about its life, doing what it has been doing for millions of years, long before any of us were ever here. And it is still doing it tonight, right now, somewhere in the deep, just out of reach, just out of sight, just patient enough to wait for us to come back down.